The offseason is heating up for the Utah Mammoth as they sign Sebastian Cossa to a 2-year deal. What does he need to do to be a competent backup to Karel Vejmelka? We'll go into all that and more on this episode of SLC Puck. So cue the music, because here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to SLC Puck. I'm your host, Austin Facer. I've been away for a little bit. I missed a couple of episodes. That's sort of rare for me, and it made me feel weird. I haven't been with you guys since last frickin' Wednesday or Thursday, so I apologize. I mean, it's not like I missed anything, right? Joking, of course. It's Tuesday, June 30th. There's been a lot happening in the wide, wonderful world of the Utah Mammoth, so this is just what I want to do. We'll just set the tone here for housekeeping really quick, because I know a lot of you guys have been like, hyperventilating and calling your therapist and possibly doing a welfare check on me because I've been absent during a very busy time. So I want you to know that I'm alive and well. Things are great. And I am going to make this up to you guys in a few different ways. So there's been like a lot happening in Mammoth world lately. JJ Peterka got traded. The NHL draft. The Utah Mammoth got a couple of really intriguing prospects in Ethan Belchez and Adam Valentini. Kyler Yamamoto just got re-signed. They swung a deal, sending out the pick they got for JJ Peterka, the 23rd overall, which came from Boston. They shipped that out to Detroit to bring in Sebastian Cossa, who's now going to be presumably the backup goal. I mean, listen, there's a lot of stuff that we got to catch up on. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm a person just like anybody else. I bleed red blood, for crying out loud. So here's what I'm going to do. Here is the way we'll proceed for the next little bit. I know you guys are dying to hear my unfeathered, unsolicited opinion, loose reporting coupled with unsolicited opinions and perhaps an unhinged rant about whatever my ADHD brain can formulate on the fly. So I know, listen, that's my trademark. That's what I do. If I were to give you guys an entire episode covering all of those things in one shebang, it would be about 3 hours long, and you would, eject very quickly into it and then be pulling your hair out by the end if you decided to stay with me the whole way. And I don't want that to happen to you. So I'm going to just split this up into a few different episodes just to catch us up on things. I mean, there's still a lot that we're going to talk about here. I mean, tomorrow is July 1st, start of free agency. The JJ Peterka trade, I think, creates a lot of interesting options for the Utah Mammoth now. Getting his $7.7 million off the books gives them a lot of increased flexibility. I think there's other things happening as well that play a factor in that, right? Barrett Hayton, restricted free agent. He's going to go into arbitration with the team. So they're not going to have to send him a qualifying offer, which also means they're not at risk of him signing a qualified offer. And I think that could have an impact on their strategy as well. And so all this stuff, right, that's happening that we got to talk about. Listen, I know here's what I love about you guys out in the wide, wonderful world of Utah sports. Like, I think we're gearing up for like what could be a really special, fun year for all of us. I think, there's so many storylines. I'm a little bit worried that the Mammoth are going to get lost in a lot of these storylines here locally. It's going to be a really fascinating year for the University of Utah football program. I think BYU has a lot on the table as well, obviously. I mean, they'll be a very strong contender to win their conference and possibly play in the college football playoff. The Jazz, I don't know if you heard, but the Jazz drafted Darren Peterson 2nd overall. That's very exciting. I think that team looks like they're in a really good place to get back in a good place. And then there's the Mammoth. team that made it to the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time ever this last season and have now raised the standard. Like that's going to happen. That has to happen again this next year. And there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of elements that are going into this. And I think you're going to see them like start to raise the bar in a lot of different ways, especially when it comes to like roster construction. I think we can kind of like parlay that into like what we're going to talk about in this episode. And again, we're talking today on June 30th. I might crank out 2 episodes today. I don't think I'll post them on the same day, but just so we can get back on track here, it seems pretty clear to me that Utah is being a little bit more judicious with how they want to spend their money this next season and what they're willing to do to take this team to the next level. And I think the big indicator, I mean, the most obvious glaring indicator that happened over the last week was shipping out JJ Peterka, the guy that they traded for a year ago and immediately signed to a 5-year contract. 1 year into that experiment, they're severing ties with him, shipping him out to Boston. They're shipping him up to Boston. Isn't that a Dropkick Murphys song? Ship him up to Boston. By the way, Boston, great city. I think there's a case that it might be the best American sports city. But man, isn't Boston kind of weird that like there's so many like amazing, prestigious institutions of higher learning there, and they're just some of the meanest, nastiest, like gruffest, like and portrayed in media as very dumb people. So I just think that's interesting. I think JJ Peterka is going to fit in really well there. Just kidding. Of course, he seems very nice and passive, and maybe if he doesn't back check, if he plays the way he played in the playoffs for the Utah Mammoth at any point in the season for the Boston Bruins, he's going to get eaten alive. So we wish him well in Boston, JJ Peterka. We'll go more into JJ perhaps later this summer, or maybe we'll just call it a clean break and move on. But what I mean to say is like it's a signal to me that now that the bar has been raised, the threshold for patience has been lowered quite a bit. That to me just seems very obvious. Like they're going to say, hey, we're not going to try to push this one through with JJ. Yes, we committed to him for 4 more years. No, we can't do it a single other one. We've got to cut ties with him and send that contract out to Boston, and we'll take back a draft pick. And what they got back from Boston sort of evolved into some different things here. So, they trade JJ out to Boston. I'm just want to make sure that I recap this correctly here. They ship JJ Peterka out to Boston. They acquire the 23rd overall pick in the 2026 NHL draft, plus a 2028 first round selection. I think that originally belonged to Florida. They turned the 23rd into Sebastian Cossa, and they also kept that 2028 first round pick as future ammo. So basically, I think there's a couple things in play here. One, bring in Sebastian Cossa. That to me signals that they want to give this guy a shot at the National Hockey League level, and he's going to get his first big chance that he's gotten since being drafted in 2021 with the Red Wings organization at being in the NHL full time. I'm pulling up his statistics here. Since being drafted from the Edmonton Oil Kings, he went back and played in the WHL for a year or so. I'm looking at his statistics right now. His draft year, he was fantastic, right? The year he was drafted, 2021, appeared in 19 games with a goals against average of 1.57 with a save percentage of .941 for a 17-1-1 record. No wonder this guy was drafted 15th overall in the first round of the 2021 draft. Returns to Edmonton in the WHL for his swan song season in the juniors. Stats sort of a return to the mean, I guess you could say, a regression to the mean, I think is the term. 46 games played. Goals against average goes up quite a bit to 2.28. Save percentage dips down, still above 900, but it goes to 913, and still turns in a very strong year with 33 wins, 9 losses, and three overtime losses. Gets to the gets to the AHL with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and sort of, he gets a cup of coffee there. Does not fare very well his first season there, 2022, 2023. Spends the majority of his time, his first year as a pro, with the Toledo Walleye of the ECHL. Pretty solid at that level, the AA level, essentially. And then finally cracks to basically full-time work in the AHL the next year, and finds his footing there with a goals against average in his first season as a full-time starter in the AHL, with a goals against average of 2.41, save percentage of 913, record of 22-9-9 in the jungle. And then that next year he makes his NHL debut, which so far has been his only appearance in the National. I don't even know which. I'm just looking at his Elite Prospects page. I'm not even sure who he played against, but I believe he came away with the victory in that. Allowed 2 goals, and it looks like maybe a couple in a shootout as well. And then, returned to the Grand Rapids Griffins. Again, strong numbers there. Save percentage below 2.5, save percentage above 900. That's been the case since then as well. And last year he did not make a single appearance with the Red Wings, but still turned in some solid work in the American Hockey League. And now he has been bestowed with a very interesting opportunity. This is a first for him. He is getting an opportunity to show what he's got at the National Hockey League level. And just to give you sort of a rundown on our good friend Sebastian Cossa, he is 23 years old. He's from the beautiful city of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. He is 6'6", big frickin' dude. Left-handed glove. That's different than Karel Vejmelka, who's a right-handed glove. So could give opponents maybe a different look, and certainly would help in practice with reps for the shooters as well. So it's very clear. My sister Sammy is going to be sad about this, but it's crystal clear at this point that last year's backup solution, Vitek Vanecek, will not be coming back to the Utah Mammoth. And Sammy was so funny when we were talking about Vanecek last season. He spoke at the end of year exit interviews. He's like, yeah, I wish I could have played more, but, Veggie made it hard on me. And so, that was something we noted. But really the truth, as I astutely pointed out to Sammy, was that the person who most hindered Vitek Vanecek's ability to step on the ice and get between the pipes for the Utah Mammoth was perhaps Vitek Vanecek. He was below par, forcing Karel Vejmelka to have an extremely unfair workload. Karel Vejmelka led the National Hockey League in appearances by a goaltender with 64. Vitek Vanecek, and to his credit, made 22 appearances, 19 starts, went a paltry 5-13-3, goals against average just a hair under 3, and a save percentage of 88.3. So not a tandem. It's we've got a dog, and we've got a little puppy, a little malnourished puppy behind him to help out. So they're going to give Sebastian Cossa his first chance in the National Hockey League, and for Cossa, I think he has to be extremely excited. This is an opportunity that he was not granted in Detroit. Again, I'm not super familiar with Detroit's goaltending situation. You'd have to ask our good friend Mike Wolf, who does Utah Hockey Podcast, about that. He's a diehard Red Wings fan, and don't eviscerate him for admitting to that. It's just the truth. But this is a guy, they're bringing in a guy who is hungry for an opportunity, and it's a big one. It's a big one. It's an extremely important job that he has to fulfill. The Utah Mammoth are putting their faith in him by signing him to a 2-year deal worth $4 million, $2 million each year for the next couple of seasons, which is pretty safe, to be honest. I mean, that's not a tremendous cap hit at all. It can probably be easily moved or tucked away. Like it's not a poisonous contract at all. It's very much like, yeah, we're going to give you the confidence we're going to give you our confidence that you can do a good job. And we're going to give you some breathing room too by putting a little term on there. I think it's smart. I like that they gave him 2 years, because I think if you're that guy, if you're Sebastian Cossa, you're finally getting your one chance and who knows, it could be your only chance. I mean, if this doesn't go well, you could wash out, right? But this is your first big chance in the National Hockey League. Imagine like how tense and nuts you would feel to be on a 1-year show me deal. That would be just unbelievably stressful. You would feel like every goal was an attack on your livelihood, and it probably would be, to be honest. So I like that they're giving him like a little bit of breathing room there with the 2-year deal. $2 million. Hey, you can, that's not a cheap chunk of change. I would kill for $2 million. Let me tell you that, but it's not a tremendous cap hit for Utah, but I'm excited for Cossa. He had his media availability today. I listened to just a little bit of it. He gave a lot of credit to Dylan Guenther, who he knew from playing with the Edmonton Oil Kings up in the W. And Guenther just was ranting and raving about how tremendous Utah has been as an organization and how much he loves the area. And just a little sidebar on that. I continue to believe Dylan Guenther is the future captain of the Utah Mammoth. I really think that's the case. And examples like that only strengthen my belief in that. But it's a moment. It's a moment for Cossa. I feel like this is a good move for Utah. If it doesn't work out, there's always in-season trades. They've got a pipeline of goaltenders that they can, turn to, in their system. Michael Robel, who is in town at the rookie development camp at the facility in Sandy, is certainly an option, depending on how he performs. Probably in the American Hockey League, I'm guessing he spent a little bit of time there towards the end of the season last year. So I think there's just a healthy amount of pressure on Cossa, but also like a healthy amount of like confidence in the organization's belief in him. So I'm excited to see what that looks like for him. So let's put it to some numbers here. Okay. And I think at the end of the day, like all anybody's going to care about are really the numbers when it comes down to goaltending. I don't think they really give a shit how you stop the puck. All they care about is that you do. And ultimately they make decisions based on statistics, your goals against average, I'm sure there's all kinds of advanced analytics that go into this, but there are some basic essential numbers that play into these decisions about whether or not they need to, maybe go a different direction or stay with what they got. It was these numbers that played a big role in their decision to not bring back Vitek Vanecek, I would imagine. So here's what I would do. I was looking at Vanecek's statistics last year. I was looking at Karel Vejmelka, and I'm thinking about Sebastian Cossa, and I'm thinking like what he needs to do is clear the bar that Vitek Vanecek set. And it's not necessarily the lowest bar in the world, but it's not the highest either. And so I went over, Vanecek's statistics just a moment ago, again, very pedestrian, 19 starts, forcing Karel Vejmelka to take, trying to do the math here, 63 starts. Bear in mind, next season, they're going to play 2 additional games. It's an 84-game season next year. Vanecek, goals against average just a hair under 3, save percentage under 9 at 88.3. So he's got to clear that bar. And what this looks like, I think, would be a scenario. This is a dream season for Sebastian Cossa. One I outlined. What he's got to keep in mind is he's got to give Utah and forget about him, and Karel Vejmelka a chance to breathe and not feel like their season is in danger over 20 times. He's got to make probably 25 to 30 starts this year. Vanecek started 19 last year. If he gets above 20, that's a great threshold. 25 would be even better. I think he can sort of solidify himself as a National Hockey League goaltender at that point. That puts Vejmelka back down into the 52, 57 game range in the regular season. Much healthier. He'll have a lot more, he'll be a lot fresher for the postseason if that comes to be. I think the ideal start, kind of the split, and this is like the most perfect world we can imagine, would be to see Vejmelka take 54 starts, Cossa with 30. But I mean, I would settle for 25 from Cossa for sure. That would be a tremendous upgrade. I think he's got to find a way to win half of those, at least 12 to 13 wins. He's got to keep his save percentage as close to 900 as he can. And he's got to give Utah a chance to win when he's in net. I mean, he's going to need the goal support as well. But if he can keep his save percentage should be as close to 900 as he can. But if he can keep his goals against average in the 2.5 goals a game territory with 25 starts, this is a guy who is well worth $2 million a year. And he might earn himself like a little bit of a contract extension there, or, force Utah to maybe plan their future around Michael Robel a little bit differently, or who knows, maybe make some bigger moves. We don't know, but it's going to be a fascinating situation. This is definitely an underrated storyline for Utah to follow this season. And I think it's so interesting that we love Karel Vejmelka. He was the team MVP the first season as the Utah Hockey Club. He's handsome. I get it. I'm not immune to his charms. He's 6'4", he's got eyes like a wolf, he's got, ginger hair, he's got like a certain kindness and sparkle to his eyes. And I'm going to stop kind of thinking about Karel Vejmelka that way, but the less we see of him, the better the Utah Mammoth are in terms of like their shape, right? Injuries not taken off the table, right? No, I'm not. If we don't see Karel Vejmelka because he's injured, yikes, that's a nightmare situation, and that is going to call for a massive adjustment on the season. But if he stays healthy and plays a little bit less, that's a thumbs up. That means Utah is in a good shape, and I think we can feel a lot more confident about where they are, not only in the standings, but where they are going to be heading into the Stanley Cup playoff. Now, it was a trade involving JJ Peterka that made this possible. And I don't think this is going to be the only fallout from this trade. I think that there are still a lot of dominoes left to fall, cards to play, balls to roll, pucks to drop, cookies to crumble, however you want to say it. Because the reality is, trading JJ Peterka takes $7.7 million off of the books for the Utah Mammoth. So what does that leave them with? I did some math here, guys. I just have to scroll up and find it. Sorry, look at this. I took notes for this episode. Holy moly, isn't that great? So what this gives Utah right now, they currently have a projected cap space of $17.5 million with 20 players on the roster. We know they have a shopping list. We know they have guys that they're interested in. If you want to believe what the national media would have you believe, they're involved in discussions for every major player on the market right now. $17.5 million in cap space right now puts them in that conversation to land not necessarily the biggest fish. They're not going to blow all that on Jason Robertson. He may not even be available. He turned down $15 million to sign with the Seattle Kraken. I've been noticing lately in the reporting that he and Dallas may be getting closer to a deal that would keep him in the Big D. But who knows? Maybe Utah is in that conversation right now. But again, we know that there are other guys on their radar. That Robert Thomas fella from the St. Louis Blues, that discussion, sort of went on it to an impasse at the trade deadline. The price was too high for him. Is the price different now in the summer? I don't know. I really don't know. I think there are other factors in play as well. Barrett Hayton not getting an offer sheet from Utah. The two teams are going to go into an arbitration hearing. I think that's kind of a sneaky situation for Utah. They're not on the hook to pay him yet. And what's interesting, I did some research on this. They can trade his rights away before the arbitration hearing, and then his new team would then be on the hook to get an arbitration with him. So Utah can avoid having a really uncomfortable conversation with Barrett Hayton and clear additional money, which they could then use to bring in an upgraded player at the center position by trading Barrett Hayton within the next day or so. I don't think that's off the table. I think that's very much a conversation that's being had. And I think there's a lot of conversations left to have. I still have a lot of things to catch up on as part of my absence. So again, forgive me. I know you guys have been like going nuts, worrying about where I've been. I'm fine. Don't worry. Here's what I'll say. And this is not important at all. But it is interesting, is I have had like a absolutely bonkers summer with some stuff going on behind the scenes that has directly impacted the show that I cannot talk about yet. And I am excited for this stuff to be done. I hope it wraps up soon. And I will gladly tell you guys all about it. I think you'll find it like absolutely fascinating. It is extremely stressful now because we're in the eye of the storm, but just know that like, hey, there's some good podcast episodes coming up soon. And guess what? These might be Patreon exclusive podcast episodes. So go to patreon.com/SLC Puck for great stuff like that. I uploaded a video today. Had a lot of fun doing that. So we appreciate you guys. I'm gonna close out this one. I think we had a good discussion on Sebastian Cossa and the one of the fallouts from the JJ Peterka trade. So we'll come back. We'll probably talk. What are we going to talk about? The NHL draft, Ethan Belchez and Adam Valentini on the next episode of SLC Puck. So stay tuned. We'll close out this one. We'll see you later, guys.